You ever notice how sometimes the people who hurt others the most seem to be doing just fine? They smile wide on social media, their lives look curated and perfect like nothing ever touched them. And meanwhile, you're sitting there with the weight of honesty on your chest, wondering how fairness even works in this world. But here's a truth the Stoics knew long before we did. Life doesn't settle its debts in public. It collects them in silence. And karma? Karma has perfect aim. It doesn't post status updates. It doesn't make a scene. It simply waits. Quietly, patiently, unfailingly. I know it feels unfair. You gave your all. You loved with intention. You stayed loyal in rooms where your name was being torn apart. And yet, somehow, the ones who lied, ghosted, and betrayed, they seem to be thriving. Glowing even, like they won. But deep down, you know something doesn't add up. Something doesn't feel real. That's because it isn't. What you're seeing is a mask, a highlight reel, a carefully edited illusion. Because you can fake joy. You can filter peace. But you can't fake alignment with your own conscience. And that's where karma works in places filters can't reach. This isn't a video about revenge. It's not about bitterness or getting even. It's about clarity. It's about recognizing that when someone walks away from something real and pretends it never mattered, life doesn't let them walk away unscathed. Not in a public meltdown, not in a dramatic downfall, but in small, silent ways. A restless heart, a growing disconnection, a creeping sense of regret that no amount of noise can drown out. Stoic thinkers like Marcus Aurelius taught us something profound. Silence is not weakness, it's wisdom. It's where the real stories play out away from the spotlight, away from the crowds. So if you're in the quiet right now, healing, reflecting, feeling like you lost something, take heart. Because while you're finding peace, life is taking care of what needs to be handled. No need to chase, no need to perform, no need to clap back. Just stay grounded and let truth do what truth always does. Rise. Have you ever looked at someone who hurt you and thought, why does it look like they're winning? It's strange, isn't it? They lied. They walked away without a word. They betrayed trust you spent years building. And yet, here they are, posting beach photos, promoting good vibes only, glowing in the spotlight, like nothing ever happened. But let me ask you something. What if what you're seeing isn't real? Because life, it doesn't hand out consequences in front of an audience. It works in silence. And karma doesn't care about timing or theatrics. It just waits. And when it moves, it never misses. See? This is where the Stoics were way ahead of us. They didn't chase revenge. They didn't shout into the void hoping someone would notice their pain. They observed. They focused on their own healing quietly, intentionally because they understood something most of us forget. Just because someone looks like they're thriving doesn't mean they're at peace. Sometimes, the loudest person in the room is hiding the deepest cracks. The curated smiles, the inspirational captions, the constant display of success, it's often a mask, a distraction from the truth they don't want to face. And here's the thing, the people who wrong you, they know, even if they'll never say it out loud. Even if they keep pretending like you never mattered, they feel the void eventually. They sense the absence of your presence, your loyalty, your energy. But that's not your job to prove. Your job is to stay grounded, to keep healing in peace, to let truth unfold the way it always does without needing a stage. So the next time you see someone who hurt you appearing to win, don't let it shake you. That's just the surface. And beneath the surface, life is already doing the work. Stay still. Stay silent. And let your growth speak louder than their performance ever could. Let's talk about healing for a second. Not the kind you post about. Not the kind wrapped in hashtags or filtered through sunset photos. I mean real healing. The kind that happens in silence, behind closed doors, far away from the performance of it all. Because here's a hard truth we don't say out loud enough. Public happiness can be a mask. And more often than we'd like to admit, it is. We live in a world where everyone's trying to look okay. Scroll through your feed for 5 minutes and you'll see it. The curated smiles, the peaceful captions, the endless self-love mantras. But peace doesn't need promotion. Healing doesn't need applause. The loudest voice in the room isn't always the one telling the truth, it's often the one trying to drown something out. Maybe you've been there before, watching someone who once hurt you post endlessly about their growth while you were quietly picking up the pieces. And for a moment you wondered, am I the only one still hurting? Did I lose while they moved on? But pause. Because what you're witnessing may not be peace, it might be performance. See, karma isn't theatrical. It's not a lightning bolt or a public reckoning. It doesn't chase revenge. It seeks balance. And it does so quietly. The Stoics understood this better than most. They knew that what matters isn't how loudly you shout your truth, but how honestly you live it. When someone walks away from something real and pretends it never mattered, life has a way of reflecting that truth back to them, not in front of a crowd, but in the solitude of their own mind. That's how karma really works. Not as punishment, but as restoration, as clarity. And often, the most powerful justice is the one that doesn't make a sound. It simply lets someone feel the weight of their choices in the quiet moments they can't escape. So, if you're healing in silence right now, if your progress isn't flashy or public, that doesn't make it any less real. In fact, it makes it more sacred. Stay in that stillness. Let karma do its work. Not to punish, but to bring everything and everyone back into alignment with the truth. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you saw someone post online about how at peace they are and actually believed it? I'm not talking about a quiet photo with a book and a coffee mug. I mean the kind of peace that doesn't need a filter. That doesn't shout, "I've moved on." That just exists. Because here's a truth we all eventually learn. Real peace doesn't need to be advertised. It's not loud. It doesn't demand attention. It lives in how you carry yourself in the stillness of your choices, not in your captions. Marcus Aurelius, one of the wisest Stoics to ever walk this earth, once wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." That's not just ancient wisdom, it's a blueprint for modern life. In a world obsessed with perception, Stoicism reminds us to be the thing, not just talk about it. You don't have to convince the world you're healing. You just have to live in a way that makes it undeniable. And oddly enough, the louder someone yells about their happiness, the more they insist they've leveled up, glowed up, moved on. The more likely they're trying to convince themselves. It's like emotional overcompensation. If you really felt free, you wouldn't need to prove it to strangers. But Stoicism teaches us to take a different road, a quieter one. It tells us that self-control is strength, that integrity doesn't need applause, that the most powerful transformation often goes unseen because it's not happening in public, it's happening within. So if you're not posting every step of your growth, good. If no one knows about your healing journey except you, better. Because that's not weakness, that's mastery. And while the world shouts, performs, and seeks constant validation, you can choose something deeper, something the Stoics live by. Silence, discipline, presence. That's the kind of peace that doesn't fade when the likes do. That's the kind of strength you don't have to announce. You just embody it. You know what no one really talks about? What happens after someone walks away from something real? Not just to you, but to them. Because here's the thing. When someone betrays your trust, lies to your face, or disappears without explanation, they may look fine on the outside. They may even act like it never touched them. But inside, something starts to shift. Quietly, gradually. They might not even notice it at first. But the laughter gets a little less honest. The connections feel thinner. Their ability to trust others to feel safe in closeness begins to break down. Because when you hurt someone who showed up with an open heart, you don't just lose that person. You lose the part of yourself that could have grown alongside them. That's where the real erosion begins. It's not dramatic. It's subtle. It's the guilt that shows up as distance. It's the shame that turns into suspicion. You see, shame is a quiet emotion. It doesn't scream, it whispers. And guilt doesn't always show up as tears, it shows up as withdrawal, self-sabotage, and an inability to connect. They begin projecting their own betrayal onto others. They assume everyone will lie because they lied. They can't trust kindness because they know what manipulation looks like. They've done it. And now, they're haunted by the echo of their own choices. Carl Jung once said, "Knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darkness of other people." But most people don't want to go there. They avoid the mirror. So instead, they build walls. Not to keep others out, but to keep their own conscience from seeping through. They think they're protecting themselves. But what they're really doing is isolating themselves from anything genuine. So while you're moving forward quietly, steadily they're stuck in a loop. Not because you cursed them, not because karma is cruel, but because life reflects. And when you betray someone real, it's only a matter of time before the emptiness you created starts to feel like home. And let me tell you, there's no lonelier place than that. You've probably heard this before. You're too sensitive. You feel too much. You care too deeply. But what if I told you that wasn't your weakness? What if that emotional depth wasn't a flaw, but a mirror? See, your presence didn't just enter someone's life. It revealed things. It brought truth to the surface, truth they might not have been ready to face. And when people run from what's real, they don't just run from you. They run from themselves. That's why your silence is so loud. That's why your stillness unsettles them. They expected chaos. They expected you to fight back, to post about it, to validate their narrative. But instead, you gave them nothing. And in that nothing, they're left to confront everything. Because silence, when used with intention, becomes a mirror. Not for punishment, but for revelation. You didn't argue. You didn't chase. You simply became the closure. And that is rare. Most people want explanations. They want justice. They want the last word. But the Stoics people, like Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus, taught us something different. That character isn't proven through rebuttals. It's revealed through how you live when no one's watching. So instead of clapping back, you carried on. Instead of proving them wrong, you became someone they could never forget. You didn't shrink in their absence. You grew. Not louder but deeper. And maybe they don't understand that. Maybe they never will. But that's not your burden to carry. Because your strength isn't in proving who you are. It's in being who you are. That's what mastery looks like. Quiet. Rooted. Unshaken. And in a world that screams for attention, there is no power more disarming than the kind of calm that doesn't need to explain itself. You know what's wild? Sometimes, the exact thing someone did to you finds its way back to them. Not as revenge, but as a mirror. This is what karma really looks like. Not thunder and lightning, not dramatic collapses or public scandals, but something far more poetic. They meet someone who treats them exactly as they once treated you. It starts off exciting, intense chemistry, a magnetic pull, promises that feel too good to question. They think, this is it, I deserve this. And maybe they do, just not in the way they think. Because slowly, things shift. The texts get colder. The warmth starts to fade. They start second-guessing every word, every moment, just like you did. And that's when it hits. They're now living in the same confusion they once handed to you. They're feeling the same ache, the same sense of being disposable, invisible. But here's the part most people miss. This isn't punishment. This is education. This is the universe gently but firmly restoring balance. You didn't wish this on them. You didn't have to, because life reflects energy. The Stoics taught us that the universe works in cycles, that what's out of alignment always finds its way back to center. Not for drama, not to destroy, but to teach. And sometimes, the only way a person understands the damage they caused is by standing on the receiving end of it. That's not cruelty. That's compassion in disguise. Because now they feel what you felt. And with that experience comes awareness. And if they choose it, growth. But that's their journey now. Yours? You're already ahead. You're living with peace, not seeking closure. You're not waiting for karma to strike. You're letting it unfold in its own quiet, intelligent way. Because the most powerful justice doesn't scream. It simply shows up as a reflection and lets them see themselves. There comes a moment after all the hurt, all the confusion, all the overthinking when you realize you don't want to be like them. The people who betrayed you. They made choices from fear, ego, and a need to control the narrative. But you're not here to match that energy. You're here to rise above it. Because going back into that same mindset of analyzing, trying to prove your worth, seeking explanations from people who refuse to be honest, that only drags you back into their chaos. And you've come too far for that. Stoicism teaches us something powerful. Real strength doesn't come from reacting. It comes from understanding. From holding your ground while the world spins wildly around you. You don't grow by clapping back. You grow by observing, setting boundaries, and learning to trust yourself again. And that's the real work, isn't it? Rebuilding trust in your own voice after someone tried to make you doubt it. But once you do that, once you start tuning into your own truth, instead of chasing validation from others, you unlock something most people never find. Freedom. Not the kind that comes from controlling others. Not the illusion of winning an argument, but the quiet, unshakable freedom that comes from mastering your inner world. That's what the Stoics lived by. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And when you understand that, you stop trying to fix people. You stop needing closure from those who ran from the truth. You stop letting someone else's inability to value you define your worth. You learn to walk forward, not bitter, but better. Not colder, but clearer. Not reactive, but rooted. So let them do what they do. You're not in their story anymore. You're writing a new one based on peace, principle, and presence. That's not just healing. That's evolution. There's a kind of justice that doesn't make headlines. It doesn't come with an apology. It doesn't show up in dramatic scenes or grand gestures. It shows up in silence, in subtle shifts, in mirrored experiences that speak louder than any words ever could. That is karma's way, not as punishment, but as clarity. You see, the people who hurt you, the ones who ghosted, lied, betrayed something real, they will face what they did. Not because you make it happen, but because life has a way of handing us a reflection. Maybe it's a relationship that feels empty. Maybe it's a moment of stillness where all the noise can't cover what they've lost. Maybe it's a new person in their life treating them with the same indifference they once showed you. And when that mirror finally shows up, they'll see themselves. They'll feel the weight of what they once dismissed, and they'll realize what was really lost you. But here's the most powerful part. You don't need to chase that justice. You don't have to prove anything. You don't have to fight to be heard. Your growth is the justice. Your peace is the answer. Your stillness, the fact that you didn't collapse, didn't become bitter, didn't break, is louder than any response you could have given. Marcus Aurelius said, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." And that's exactly what you've done. You've chosen discipline over drama, integrity over impulse, presence over performance. That's not weakness. That's strength in its most refined form. That's character real, lasting, and unshakable. So, if you're still waiting for closure, let this be it. Not from their mouth, but from your own growth, your own quiet, unwavering decision to move forward without dragging the past with you. You don't need their words. You don't need their regret. You are the closure, and you are free.